Her name is Naomi, a poor janitor with no formal education, working quietly at the state university. Every day she swept the classrooms where others chased the dreams she could never afford. But one day everything changed. The vice chancellor announced a challenge, a question so difficult that no student could solve it. Days passed, and no one came close. Until one night, while cleaning the hall, Naomi stumbled upon the unsolved problem. What she did next shocked the entire university and changed her life forever. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you're new here, kindly subscribe and join us on this unforgettable journey of hope, lessons, and second chances. Let's get into it. The sun had barely risen above the rusty zinc roofs of Umwezi village when Naomi stepped outside with a metal bucket balanced on her head. The morning air was cold, crisp, and silent, except for the distant bleating of goats and the echoing clang of pestles from women pounding yam. Her bare feet sank into the soft red earth as she made her way toward the village stream. A narrow path flanked by tall elephant grasses that brushed against her arms as she walked. At just 19, Naomi had the beauty of youth and the weariness of someone far older. Life in Umwezi had never been kind to dreamers, and Naomi was a dreamer. Her father, Mr. Aid, had once been one of the most respected teachers in the local government school. For decades, he had stood before chalkboards, shaping the minds of young children who called him Master Aid. But when the government stopped paying pensions, the respect faded with time. Years passed. His clothes grew worn, his shoes thin, and his voice quieter with every broken promise from the authorities who owed him. Their home was a small, mud-walled building with 2 rooms and a leaking roof. Inside, old textbooks lined the walls like forgotten treasures. A weathered chalkboard, cracked at the corners, stood by the window. That was Mr. Aid's world. That was Naomi's classroom. Every evening after Naomi returned from the day's chores, he would call her name from the doorway. "Naomi, my daughter, are you ready for your lessons?" And though she might be tired from fetching water or grinding cassava, she would smile faintly and nod. "Yes, Papa." They would sit on wooden stools under the flickering light of a kerosene lantern. On the board, her father would draw diagrams, write equations, and ask questions like a university professor before a single student. He had no audience but her, yet he taught with passion, as if the whole world depended on what he was teaching that night. "Mathematics," he would say, chalk in hand, "is not about numbers alone. It is about understanding the mind of God. Every line, every symbol has a rhythm." Naomi would listen, wide-eyed, her fingers moving quickly over her old exercise book, filling pages with symbols and notes. Her father saw in her something special, a mind sharp as lightning, quick to grasp and never forgetting. Sometimes, after a particularly complex lesson, he would step back, looking at her in admiration. "You have a gift, Naomi," he would whisper. "A mind that was meant for the stars, not for these dusty village roads." But dreams, no matter how bright, often collide with reality, and reality in Umwezi was cruel. When Naomi finished secondary school, she passed with distinctions. Her name was even announced on the local radio as one of the top students in the state. She was sure she would go to university next. But the acceptance letter that came in the mail became a wound that never healed, because there was no money to make it real. She remembered the night she showed the letter to her father. His hands trembled as he held it, his eyes shining with pride and pain. "My daughter," he said softly, "you have done what even sons of the rich could not do." "But his voice broke, "I cannot send you to school, not yet. The pension I'm owed would have paid your fees twice over." Naomi said nothing. She only knelt before him and rested her head on his lap. "Papa, it's not your fault," she whispered. "You already gave me the most important thing. Knowledge." Tears glistened in the old man's eyes. "Knowledge is good, my child, but opportunity is better." That night, Naomi cried quietly on her bamboo bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. She thought of other girls her age, laughing in dormitories, wearing white lab coats, attending lectures, and wondered what it would feel like to sit in a real university classroom. Every morning after, she forced a smile and carried on with her chores. But deep down, a hunger burned inside her. The hunger to learn, to achieve, to be more than the poor teacher's daughter. Her father never stopped teaching her. Even when he grew weak and tired, he would still hold the chalk and say, "One day, Naomi, the world will see what I see in you." She didn't know then how true those words would become, that the same mind taught in a broken hut would one day solve a mystery that even the greatest scientists couldn't unravel. But for now, Naomi was just a poor village girl with a chalk-stained notebook, a retired father, and a dream too big for her small world. And though she didn't know it yet, her story, the story of the teacher's daughter, was only just beginning. The bus rattled along the dusty road leading into the city, its tired engine coughing as it climbed the hill toward the state university gate. Naomi sat by the window, clutching a small nylon bag that contained everything she owned. 2 dresses, a worn Bible, her father's old wristwatch, and a few tattered notebooks filled with his lessons. Her eyes were bright with both fear and hope. Leaving Umuezi had not been easy. Her father's voice echoed in her heart as the bus approached the city. "Go, my daughter," he had said that morning, his frail hand resting on her head. "Even if you cannot study now, at least work close to knowledge. Stay near the light until it finds you." The state university stood tall and magnificent, its white buildings glimmering under the afternoon sun. Students in crisp clothes laughed in groups, carrying books and laptops, their faces carefree. Naomi stood at the gate, her slippers coated with red dust, her heart pounding as she clutched the small piece of paper that read, "Vacancy, janitorial staff needed." It wasn't the kind of job she dreamed of, but it was something. It was a doorway, however small, to the world she longed to enter. Inside the administrative office, she met Mrs. Bello, a middle-aged woman with sharp glasses and a firm tone. "You want to be a cleaner?" the woman asked, scanning Naomi's frame from head to toe. "Yes, Ma." "I'm ready to work hard," Naomi replied, her voice low but steady. "Do you have any experience?" "No, Ma, but I can learn quickly." Mrs. Bello sighed and handed her a form. "You'll start tomorrow morning. Report by 6:30. Uniform will be provided." Naomi bowed her head in gratitude. "Thank you, Ma." That night she stayed in the janitor's quarters, a small concrete block behind the laboratory building, shared by 5 other cleaners. The air was hot and humid. Rats scurried in the corners, and the walls were stained with age. Yet Naomi smiled as she lay on her narrow bed. "At least," she whispered to herself, "I'm close to knowledge." The next morning she put on her faded blue uniform, tied her scarf neatly, and began her duty. She swept the corridors, washed the floors, and emptied bins filled with crumpled papers and half-eaten snacks. Her broom moved like a violin bow, rhythmically, gracefully, but her eyes were always alert. Each time she entered a classroom, her gaze would wander over the chalkboard. Equations, diagrams, theories, strange symbols that made her heart race. Sometimes she would pause, staring long enough for the head cleaner, Mama Rose, to scold her. "Naomi, stop daydreaming, I beg. You go lose this job, oh." "I'm sorry, Ma," she'd reply quickly, returning to her work. But her mind stayed with the equations. During her breaks, while others chatted or slept, Naomi would quietly pick up discarded notes and textbooks left behind by students. She would clean them, smooth out the wrinkles, and read every word under the shade of a mango tree. At night after her shift, she'd light a small candle in her room and continue reading. The university became her classroom. The students, her silent teachers. Sometimes she overheard discussions that made her heart ache. "Bro, that thermodynamic principle, Ian, it's giving me headache," one boy complained. "Guy, same here. I don't even get that formula," his friend replied. Naomi, sweeping quietly nearby, would smile faintly. "I know that one," she thought. "Papa taught me last year." But each time she watched them laugh, carrying their books to lectures, a deep pain pricked her heart. She should have been one of them, sitting in those classes, asking questions, chasing dreams. Instead, she wiped their tables and mopped their floors. One evening as she cleaned the science hall, she paused before the wide blackboard covered in symbols from that day's lecture. Something inside her stirred. She picked up a small chalk piece left behind and traced the formulas, whispering them softly like a prayer. For a moment she felt alive, as if her father were beside her again, guiding her hand. Then footsteps echoed behind her, and she quickly dropped the chalk. It was a group of students returning to pick up a forgotten book. She pretended to sweep, but they didn't even look at her. To them, she was invisible, just the janitor in the corner. That night, she sat outside under the moonlight, her broom resting beside her. The campus glowed in the distance, filled with laughter, lights, and possibilities. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "God, you gave me a mind." But no place to use it. Why? Tears rolled down her cheeks, mixing with the dust on her face. Yet even in her sadness, there was a quiet resolve. She wiped her tears and whispered, "But one day I will prove that even a cleaner can shine." Naomi didn't know how or when, but destiny was already listening, waiting for the perfect moment to turn her pain into purpose. And that moment was closer than she could ever imagine. The semester was halfway through, and the state university buzzed with excitement. News had spread across the campus that Dr. Raymond, the world-renowned theoretical physicist from the University of Oxford, would be visiting for a special research seminar. His work on quantum mechanics and energy transformation had earned him international fame. For many students, it was a dream come true. The chance to meet a man whose name was written in their textbooks, Naomi, though only a janitor, could feel the shift in the air. Every classroom was freshly polished, every corridor scrubbed spotless. The entire janitorial staff was put on alert. "We must make this place shine like heaven," Mrs. Bello had said sternly during morning briefing. Naomi nodded silently, clutching her broom like a sword. She loved days like this, days that brought her closer to knowledge. She didn't know who Dr. Raymond was, but she could sense he was someone important. That morning, the university auditorium overflowed with students, professors, and reporters. Naomi, standing quietly at the back with her mop, watched as the tall, silver-haired scientist walked in, surrounded by the dean and other senior staff. He spoke with a calm authority that commanded respect. "My dear students," Dr. Raymond began, his voice carrying through the hall, "science is not about what you know. It is about how you think. Intelligence is not measured by memory, but by imagination." Naomi's heart stirred. Imagination. That word echoed in her mind like music. Then came the challenge. Dr. Raymond turned to the whiteboard behind him and wrote a long equation, symbols so complex that even the professors leaned forward. He explained that it was a modern adaptation of an unsolved problem in theoretical physics, one that had baffled scientists for decades. "Whoever solves this," he said, smiling, "will not only make history, but change the world of science forever." The room erupted in murmurs, cameras flashed, students whispered to one another in excitement. After the seminar, he left the equation written on the whiteboard, daring anyone brave enough to attempt it. For the next few days, the university buzzed with feverish energy. Groups of science students filled the classrooms, scribbling formulas, drawing diagrams, and arguing deep into the night. Even postgraduate students joined in, trying to impress Dr. Raymond. Yet, despite their efforts, no one could find the solution. Naomi, meanwhile, continued her silent duty, sweeping the lecture halls each night and after the students left. She noticed how the whiteboard in Hall 7 never got erased. The strange symbols stared at her each evening like a secret waiting to be understood. One night, curiosity got the better of her. She dropped her broom and approached the board. The hall was empty. The moonlight poured through the high windows, bathing the room in silver. She ran her fingers lightly over the chalk marks and whispered the symbol softly to herself. It felt familiar. Not the problem itself, but the rhythm of it, the way numbers and letters danced together. Her father used to teach her something similar, though in simpler form. She stood there thinking, her heart racing. If I could just try. Naomi looked around. No one was there. Slowly, she picked up a piece of chalk from the tray and began writing on the board. At first, her hand trembled, but soon instinct took over. Equations flowed from her memory, connected by logic that only she seemed to see. The air around her felt electric. She murmured formulas under her breath, lost in a trance of thought. For hours she worked, erasing, rewriting, calculating. The hall was silent except for the soft sound of chalk gliding across the board. Sweat trickled down her neck, but she didn't stop. Every lesson her father had taught her, every late-night discussion, every exercise book filled with notes, came rushing back. And then, It happened. Naomi reached the final line of the equation and paused. She blinked, staring at what she had written. The answer made perfect sense. She checked it twice, 3 times. It was flawless. Her lips parted in disbelief. "I did it," she whispered. "Oh my God, I solved it." Her hands trembled as she dropped the chalk. For a long time, she just stood there, staring at the board. Then she smiled, a small, quiet smile of victory. She didn't think of glory or reward. She only felt peace, as though a door had opened in her soul. She picked up her broom and continued cleaning, leaving the board untouched. By dawn, the equation gleamed under the rising sun. Every line neat, every symbol precise. The next morning, chaos erupted. Students poured into Hall 7 and froze. The unsolved question, the same one that had mocked them for days, was now fully answered. The handwriting was different, clear, elegant, and precise. Professors rushed in, analyzing the solution. Their shock turned into disbelief. The mathematics was perfect. "Who did this?" one of them gasped. Word spread like wildfire. The dean informed Dr. Raymond immediately. Within hours, the scientist himself arrived, eyes wide with astonishment as he studied the board. This is correct," he muttered. "Every line, every variable, it's perfect." But who solved it? No student came forward. No one could claim it. The dean ordered the security department to check the CCTV footage from the night before. Everyone gathered in the control room, professors, staff, and students, waiting anxiously. And then the truth appeared. On the black and white screen, the janitor in the blue uniform was seen entering the hall, broom in hand. She stood before the board for a long time, then picked up a chalk and began to write. No one spoke. The silence was deafening. Dr. Raymond leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Who is that girl?" he asked softly. The technician replied, "That's Naomi, sir." "She's one of the janitors." Dr. Raymond's lips parted in awe. "A janitor?" he repeated. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. "Call her," he said quietly. "Call her right now." When Naomi was summoned to the administrative building, her hands trembled so much that she nearly dropped her mop. The head cleaner, Mama Rose, frowned at her. "Naomi, what didn't you do again? I told you to mind yourself in that science hall." "I didn't do anything, Ma," Naomi whispered, clutching the handle of her broom as though it were her lifeline. But in truth, her heart pounded with fear. Had they found out she'd touched the professor's board? She hadn't meant it any harm. She had only wanted to see if she could solve it. Now, maybe, they were going to fire her. The walk to the dean's office felt endless. Every step echoed down the marble corridor, her slippers scuffing against the shiny floor. Students passed by, laughing and chattering, not knowing that the quiet janitor walking among them had just done something that would soon shake the entire academic world. When she reached the office door, the secretary gestured for her to wait. Through the frosted glass, Naomi could see silhouettes. The dean, 2 professors, and a tall man with gray hair who stood apart from the rest. She didn't know it yet, but that was Dr. Raymond, the man whose challenge she had unknowingly conquered. "Naomi 80, the secretary finally called. "Yes, Ma," Naomi said, her voice trembling. "They're waiting for you." "Go in," Naomi stepped inside. The air-conditioned room smelled of books and coffee. The dean looked up from behind his desk, adjusting his glasses. "Are you Naomi?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she whispered, bowing slightly. "Sit down." She perched nervously on the edge of a chair, her eyes darting from one professor to another. None of them smiled. Then Dr. Raymond spoke. His voice was calm but curious. "You work here as a janitor, correct?" "Yes, sir." "And you cleaned Hall 7 last night?" "Yes, sir." He paused for a moment, studying her face. "Naomi," he said slowly, "someone solved the equation I wrote on the board. A question that has baffled scientists for over a decade. The CCTV shows you were the only person in that hall last night. Did you solve it?" Naomi's heart stopped. Her mouth went dry. She stared at the floor, twisting her fingers nervously. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered. "I didn't mean to touch it. Please don't fire me. I was just cleaning and I saw it," and tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know what came over me. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, to her surprise, Dr. Raymond smiled. Fire you, he said softly. Why would we fire the only person who could solve what hundreds of scholars couldn't? Naomi blinked, confused. Sir? He leaned forward, his eyes warm. You solved it, Naomi. And not by accident. Your reasoning is perfect. Your logic, brilliant. Tell me, where did you learn all this? She hesitated, still unsure if this was real. My father taught me, sir. He was a teacher, a retired one. He taught me at home with old books and chalkboards. I didn't go to university because he couldn't afford it. The room went silent. Dr. Raymond's eyes softened. A teacher, he murmured. Now that makes sense. The dean cleared his throat, astonished. Mr. Aide must be a remarkable man. And you, young lady, have an extraordinary gift. Naomi couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her tears, once of fear, now turned to relief. Thank you, sir, she whispered, wiping her eyes. Dr. Raymond stood up and paced slowly before the desk. Do you know what this means? He asked, turning toward her. Your solution proves a concept that scientists have been debating for years. This discovery will change how we understand quantum symmetry. Naomi, you've done something extraordinary. She didn't understand all his words, but she understood his tone. It was admiration, something she had never received from strangers before. When he finally sat down, he looked her straight in the eyes. Tell me, Naomi, what do you want most in life? Her voice cracked as she answered, I just want to go to school, sir. I want to learn, properly, in a classroom with books and teachers. That's all I've ever wanted. Dr. Raymond's face broke into a smile. He turned to the dean. Then she shall have it. Excuse me? The dean asked, startled. I will personally fund her education, Dr. Raymond said firmly. From this moment, Naomi Aide is a student of this university. Full scholarship, all expenses paid. She belongs here, Naomi gasped. Sir, no, I can't. He raised a hand gently. You can. And you will. Genius has no uniform, Naomi. Whether you wear a lab coat or a janitor's cloth, the mind inside you is what matters. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, Thank you, sir. Thank you. By the next morning, the entire campus knew her name. The janitor genius. Students whispered in disbelief. Professors quoted her as a miracle. Even the vice-chancellor called for a special press release to honor her. But for Naomi, the most emotional moment came a few days later when Dr. Raymond asked to meet her father. When the old man arrived on campus, leaning on a walking stick, he looked lost among the tall buildings and polishing cars. Naomi ran to him, hugging him tightly. Papa! They know now. They know everything you taught me. Tears rolled down Mr. Aide's wrinkled face as he held her hands. My daughter, he said softly, I told you one day the world would see what I see in you. That day, in front of cameras and students, Dr. Raymond bowed slightly before Mr. Aide. Sir, he said, the world owes you gratitude. You have raised a mind that will change the future. The crowd erupted in applause and Naomi's heart swelled with pride. She was no longer the invisible girl sweeping classrooms. She was a student, a scholar, a living proof that destiny could rise even from the dust. And as the sun set over the campus that evening, Naomi looked up at the glowing sky and whispered, Papa was right. The stars do listen. The news of Naomi's astonishing breakthrough spread across the entire nation like wildfire. From the university corridors to television networks, from radio stations to social media, everyone was talking about the janitor genius, the 19-year-old girl who solved a problem that baffled top scientists. For the first time in her life, Naomi was no longer invisible. Students who once walked past her without a glance now stopped to stare. Some whispered with admiration, others with envy. Cameras followed her wherever she went, and reporters camped outside the university gate, hoping to catch a glimpse of the girl who changed everything. But Naomi remained humble. She still wore her old slippers, still greeted everyone with her quiet smile. Fame had not changed her spirit. Deep down, she was still the same village girl who once studied under the glow of a kerosene lamp. The university administration, in partnership with Dr. Raymond, organized a press conference in the main auditorium. Banners reading, "Celebrating Brilliance Beyond Boundaries," hung across the hall. Naomi sat beside Dr. Raymond, her hands clasped tightly on her lap. The flashing lights of cameras made her nervous. When the vice chancellor took the microphone, his voice boomed with pride. Today, history is made. A young woman, once a janitor in our very own institution, has done what many thought impossible. Naomi Ade, a name that will be remembered not just in Nigeria, but around the world. The crowd erupted in applause. Naomi's eyes watered as she tried to hold back tears. Then Dr. Raymond stood, adjusting his glasses. Ladies and gentlemen, intelligence has no class, no title, and no uniform. Naomi's mind reminds us that true education is not always found in classrooms, but in the fire of curiosity. Her work proves that genius can come from anywhere. Even from the humblest broom, the hall fell silent for a moment, then exploded into another wave of clapping. Naomi felt her heart swell. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated at first. Public speaking had never been part of her life. She was used to silence, not microphones. But she remembered her father's voice. Speak with courage, even if your voice shakes. She took a deep breath and stood. Thank you, everyone, she began, her voice soft but steady. I didn't do this alone. My father, Mr. Aide, taught me everything I know. We didn't have money, but we had knowledge. And he always told me that education is not about school fees. It's about hunger to learn. Her words touched hearts. Even the professors in the front row wiped their eyes. I only solved that problem, she continued, because I was curious. Because I refused to let poverty decide what I could learn. There are many like me out there, children who are intelligent but poor. If I can make it here, so can they. When she sat down, the room stood in ovation. It wasn't just applause, it was respect. That night, Naomi returned to her small janitor's room for the last time. The management had already offered her a student hostel, but before leaving, she wanted to sit in the place where it all began. The mop, the broom, and the half-broken lantern still stood by the corner. She smiled faintly. Thank you, she whispered to the room as though it could hear her. You held my tears, my dreams, and my hope. When she moved into her new hostel the next morning, the other students welcomed her warmly. They gave her notebooks, pens, and even a brand new backpack. Yet Naomi never bragged. She still helped others, tutoring classmates who struggled with equations. Meanwhile, Dr. Raymond made arrangements for her scholarship, full tuition, living expenses, and a small monthly allowance. But that wasn't all. He also ensured that her father's pension issue was raised before the state education board. Within weeks, the government finally paid the long overdue funds. The day Naomi told her father, he broke down in tears. My pension? He whispered. After all these years? Yes, Papa. Naomi laughed through tears. They said Dr. Raymond spoke for you. You can finally rest. The old man clasped her hands, trembling. Rest? My daughter, how can I rest when my heart is dancing? God used you to answer my prayers. The following months were like a dream. Naomi attended classes, sat among students she once cleaned for, and impressed her lecturers with her sharp mind. Every professor wanted to mentor her. Every department wanted to feature her in their research. But Naomi never forgot where she came from. One afternoon after class, she returned quietly to Hall 7, the same room where she had once solved the impossible equation. She stood before the board, remembering that night. The light filtering through the window was golden, just like it had been then. She whispered softly, it all started here, when no one was watching. Behind her, Dr. Raymond's voice came gently. That's how true discovery begins, Naomi, when no one is watching. The universe reveals itself only to those who listen in silence. She turned, smiling. Thank you for believing in me, sir. No, Naomi, he said, smiling back. Thank you for reminding the world what belief truly means. As the evening sun bathed the hall in amber light, Naomi picked up a piece of chalk and wrote in small letters beneath the old equation, Genius has no uniform. It stayed there for weeks, untouched, as students passed by daily. A quiet reminder of how greatness can rise from the lowest places. That night, back in her dormitory, Naomi opened her journal and wrote a single sentence. My father taught me the formulas of life, patience, humility, and faith. And with them, I solved my destiny. She didn't know it yet, but her story was far from over. The world had only just discovered her, and destiny had even greater plans for the poor janitor with a 900 IQ. Naomi's life had changed so suddenly that sometimes she woke up wondering if she was still dreaming. Just months earlier, she had been the girl sweeping dusty lecture halls. Now she walked through the same halls wearing a white lab coat, carrying textbooks, and sitting among students who once ignored her. But while others saw a miracle, Naomi still carried quiet fears inside her heart. She was grateful, yet deeply grateful, but she sometimes wondered if she truly belonged there. The professors spoke fast, their terms heavy with scientific language. Her classmates typed on sleek laptops while she scribbled notes in her father's old exercise book. More than once, she sat at the back of the class, her eyes glazing over the formulas on the board, whispering to herself, "Don't fail, Naomi. Don't make them regret believing in you." Yet every time that fear crept in, she would remember her father's words. "You can't learn everything in one day, my daughter. Even rivers begin as trickles." So she worked harder than anyone else. She studied late into the night, revising notes under the dim hostel lamp. Her roommates sometimes laughed at her seriousness, but she didn't mind. She was living the dream her father had prayed for. One rainy evening, after a long day of lectures, Naomi received a call from the faculty secretary. "Naomi, Dr. Raymond would like to see you in his office tomorrow morning." Her heart skipped. Every time he called for her, she felt the same rush of fear and awe. Dr. Raymond was kind but intimidating, a man of few words, always precise, always observing. The next morning, Naomi arrived at his office, nervous as usual. He smiled when she entered. "Good morning, Naomi," he said warmly. "Please sit." She obeyed, folding her hands on her lap. "I've been following your progress," he began. "You've done exceptionally well. But that's not why I called you." Naomi's pulse quickened. "Sir?" He leaned back in his chair. "I've been invited to present a paper at the International Conference on Quantum Physics in Switzerland next month. And I would like you to join me." Naomi's mouth fell open. "Me, sir?" "Yes, you. You're the one who solved the equation. It's your work as much as mine now. You deserve to stand where the world can see you." Her heart thudded wildly. Switzerland? She had never even left her state before. She felt dizzy just imagining it. "But sir," she stammered, "I don't even have a passport." "I've never been on a plane." Dr. Raymond chuckled softly. "Then it's time you experience both. The university will handle everything." Tears filled Naomi's eyes. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. All she could whisper was, "Thank you, sir. Thank you." That night, she called her father, her voice trembling with excitement. "Papa, I'm going abroad, to a conference in Switzerland." The old man's laugh crackled through the phone. "Abroad? My daughter, God has finally remembered us. You see now why I said never stop learning?" Naomi smiled through tears. "Yes, Papa. You were right. Always right." The following weeks moved like a dream. The university sponsored her travel documents, clothes, and ticket. For the first time, she stepped into an airplane, a huge silver bird that roared like thunder. As the plane rose into the clouds, she pressed her face against the window, eyes wide with wonder. Below her, Nigeria disappeared into a sea of clouds. When they landed in Geneva, Naomi could hardly believe her eyes. The streets were spotless, the air cool, the buildings shining under white snow. She walked beside Dr. Raymond like a child seeing heaven for the first time. At the conference, she sat quietly as the world's top scientists presented their research. But when it was her turn to speak, her fear nearly choked her. She stood before hundreds of foreign faces, professors, journalists, and scholars. Her voice trembled as she began, "My name is Naomi Ade, from Nigeria. I used to be a janitor at my university." A wave of murmurs swept across the hall. Naomi continued, her voice gaining strength. "But one night I saw a question on the board. I didn't plan to solve it. I was only cleaning. But something in me couldn't walk away. My father taught me never to fear what my mind can touch. So I tried. And here I am today." When she finished explaining her discovery, the entire room stood up and applauded. Tears streamed down her cheeks as Dr. Raymond joined her on stage, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This," he said proudly, "is proof that brilliance knows no boundaries. Talent can bloom even in the poorest soil." The story of Naomi Ade, the janitor with a 900 IQ, spread far beyond Nigeria. Science journals wrote about her. International organizations reached out. Scholarships and sponsorships flooded in. She was even featured on a global education channel under the headline, "The Girl Who Solved the Impossible." But among all the honors, Naomi's favorite moment came when she returned home months later. The villagers gathered to welcome her, drummers beating joyfully, children chanting her name. Her father stood before the crowd, tears glistening in his eyes as she ran into his arms. "My daughter," he said proudly, "you have made me the happiest man alive. Even the dust that clung to your feet has turned to gold." Naomi smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Papa, I couldn't have done it without you. Every formula you taught me, every word of hope, it all led here." He nodded gently. "Then promise me something, my child." "Anything, Papa." "When you rise, lift others too." She took his hand and whispered, "I promise, Owen." And she meant it. Because Naomi's journey wasn't just about genius or fame. It was about the quiet power of knowledge, the strength of humility, and the reward of faith that never wavered. The morning sun poured through the curtains of Naomi's modest apartment near the university, bathing her room in soft gold. The walls were filled with certificates, framed photos, and one precious image of her and her father smiling in front of the State University auditorium. Beneath it hung a simple plaque that read, "Genius has no uniform." It had been 2 years since the night she solved the impossible equation. 2 years since a janitor had shaken the world of science. Life had changed dramatically, yet Naomi remained grounded. She was now a full-time student of medicine, a research assistant to Dr. Raymond, and a symbol of hope to millions of poor students across Africa. But fame had brought new responsibilities. Every week, letters arrived from young people across the country, letters from villages, small towns, and city slums. Some wrote in English, others in shaky handwriting in local dialects. They all said the same thing. "Naomi, you are our inspiration. You make us believe it's possible." She read every single one, smiling softly. She knew how it felt to be unseen, unheard, forgotten by a world that only celebrated privilege. She wanted to change that. And so, one quiet evening, while visiting her father in Umueze, Naomi shared an idea. "Papa," she said, kneeling by his chair, "I want to build something. A school. Not just any school, but one where children from poor homes can learn freely. A place where no one is turned away because of money." Mr. Aid looked at her for a long time, his wrinkled hands trembling with emotion. "My daughter," he said slowly, "that would be the greatest lesson you could ever teach the world." That night, Naomi wrote the name of her dream on a piece of paper. The Aid Foundation for Hidden Geniuses. Within months, Dr. Raymond helped her secure sponsorship. The university donated land. Former students and kind philanthropists contributed funds. Soon, construction began. A modern school building rising proudly in the same dusty village where Naomi's own education had once ended. The day of the school's opening felt like a miracle. The governor, university officials, and foreign press attended. Children in clean uniforms stood in rows, waving flags. Naomi, now 21, stood before the crowd in a simple white gown, her father beside her in a neatly pressed native outfit. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped up to the podium. The breeze lifted her hair gently as she looked at the faces before her. Young, hopeful, full of dreams. "2 years ago," she began, "I was cleaning a classroom when I found a question no one could answer. That night, I didn't just solve an equation. I solved my destiny. I realized that sometimes the world hides its brightest minds in the most unexpected places." She paused, her eyes misty. "There are children in villages, in slums, and in the corners of this nation who are geniuses. But poverty has silenced them. This school is for them, for every child who dares to dream, even when life tells them not to." The crowd erupted in applause. Mr. Aid stood proudly, tears streaming down his face. As Naomi unveiled the plaque that bore her father's name, she turned and knelt before him, saying, "This is for you, Papa, for every lesson, every night you believed in me." He placed his hand on her head, blessing her through his tears. "My daughter, you have done what even kings cannot do. You have built knowledge from dust." The story of the Aid Foundation for Hidden Geniuses quickly spread across Africa. Students applied from everywhere. Orphans, market children, young boys and girls with raw brilliance but no opportunity. Naomi personally taught many of them, often repeating the same words her father had once told her. Mathematics is not just numbers. It's understanding the mind of God. Dr. Raymond, now aging gracefully, visited often. Watching Naomi teach filled him with pride. "You've done it, Naomi," he said one afternoon, standing in the courtyard. "You've become what your father always dreamed of, a light for others." Naomi smiled. "And I couldn't have done it without you, sir. You believed in me before the world did." He chuckled softly. "No, my dear. I only opened a door. You were the light that walked through it." As months passed, Naomi's research gained international attention. The scientific community still hailed her equation as the odd principle, named after her and her father. Universities invited her to lecture. Prestigious journals published her work. Yet despite her growing fame, she remained devoted to her roots. She spent weekends in Umueze, sitting with her father under the mango tree, just like old times, two souls bound by the love of learning. One evening as they sat watching the sunset, her father spoke quietly. "Naomi," he said, "my time is drawing near. I'm old and my bones are tired, but I can go in peace because I've seen my seed flourish." Naomi held his hand tightly, tears forming. "Don't say that, Papa." He smiled faintly. "Even stars fade, my child. But when they do, their light keeps shining. You are my light now. Keep shining wherever you go." A few months later, Mr. Aid passed away peacefully in his sleep, his old chalkboard resting beside his bed. The nation mourned him like a hero. At his burial, Naomi stood by his grave, holding a piece of chalk in her hand. She whispered through her tears, "I'll keep teaching, Papa. I'll keep your lessons alive." Years later, that promise blossomed into a global movement. The Aid Foundation expanded across several African countries, offering scholarships and science programs to thousands of underprivileged students. Naomi became an international ambassador for education, often called the girl who taught the world to dream. But in her heart, she remained the same, the poor janitor's daughter who once dared to pick up a piece of chalk and believe. On the 10th anniversary of her discovery, Naomi returned quietly to Hall 7. The room had been renovated, but the same board stood proudly behind glass. Beneath the framed equation were the words she had written years ago. "Genius has no uniform." She touched the glass gently, smiling through tears. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered. "We did it." The wind rustled through the open window as if answering her. She stood there for a while, eyes closed, listening to the echoes of her past. The creak of her broom, her father's voice, the whisper of chalk on board. Then she turned, lifted her chin toward the light, and walked away. No longer the poor janitor, no longer the lost girl, but the woman who had risen from dust to destiny. Moral of the story: true genius isn't born in wealth or comfort. It's born in struggle, nurtured by perseverance, and revealed through faith. Even the one holding a broom may one day hold the key to the stars. I hope you enjoyed this powerful story. Please share your thoughts and tell us what you learned in the comment section. We'd truly love to hear from you. And guess what? Another inspiring and emotional story is coming your way in just a few days. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on your notification bell. Don't forget to like this video and share it with your family and friends. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your support always.